Hello, and welcome back to the latest episode of the Saint Squad Show. I'm your host, Dylan Sanders, and I am on vacation.
Jackson, host of the Locked On Saints podcast, and I wish I was on vacation.
John Hendricks, New Orleans Football, and I'm one of two people that told you 3 months ago that Spencer Rattler was going to be the starter in Week 1. I'm going to take my victory lap now.
And I'm former Saints wide receiver Lance Moore, and how about those Cowboys?
It's the Saint Squad, sponsored by Gametime. Everything New Orleans Saints, every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from down in the Big Easy, the way only Locked On Podcast Network can. Get ready and squad up. It's the Saint Squad Show, starting now.
Howdy, Nation. Howdy, Nation. Welcome back to the Saint Squad Show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making us your first listen every Thursday and Sunday. We have a unique group of experts here ready to bring you a fun and informative show on everything New Orleans Saints. Unfortunately for us, there's not been much to talk about in the world of the New Orleans Saints for the past week.
Nah, we can just go ahead and end the show. See ya.
Yeah, I mean, y'all don't even want to hear it. No, we're going to be talking about the 53-man roster, some of our favorite moves, some of the biggest surprises. And then, of course, the quarterback competition is where we're going to start. Spencer Rattler won. What does that mean for him? What does that mean for Tyler Shough? We're going to dive all into that today. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, let's jump into it. Let's get to talking about the Saints, folks, because we have a lot to fit into today's episode. I am on vacation, but I'm still coming from the Outer Banks. It's a family trip. I'm rocking the family. We all have matching shirts, so I'm still rocking that.
That's sick.
Oh, man. Blink twice if you're held against your will.
Yeah, right.
Ross knows my mom and knows if I don't do it with full enthusiasm, I'm gonna get a whooping at my big old age. So I'm all in.
All righty.
Let's start with Spencer Rattler winning the quarterback job. And John, you did have it right. So let's start with you. What does that mean for Spencer Rattler? What does it look like for the first couple of weeks of the season for him?
Well, hopefully it's not brutal. I mean, it's some tough draws, right? I mean, you got the Cardinals, the 49ers, Seahawks, and the Bills. So that is a particularly first 4 games that is very hard. Now, look, with Spencer Rattler, this is not surprising to me because what I said months ago was that, again, going from rookie to second year, game slows down. Kellen Moore talked about all of the mechanics, the things that he did like about him on tape and such. And it seemed like everything that he saw ended up developing into what he needed to do to win the competition. Now, this was a close competition, right? We know that. It was just one of those things where I feel like you go with the guy who's had the experience. And this doesn't mean the end for Tyler Shough. He's going to keep chopping at it. He may get his opportunity sooner rather than later, even though Kellen Moore said that we're not going to do a weekly thing of changing a quarterback or anything, which I kind of like because I think they should make this work. We don't need a quarterback carousel. But with Rattler, man, again, he has the tools, I feel like, to help lead this offense. It's put up, shut up. He's going to lead the team. He's going to do all the things he needs to. He's got the offensive line. He's got the receiving talent. They've got more receivers than they know what to do with. Now it's time to put it together. And I don't expect it to look perfect week 1, but I expect much more improvement than the previous 7 starts that he had. We'll see if it comes true, but I'm excited for Rattler. Somebody had to win the job. Somebody has to lose. That's how it goes in today's world. It's a shocker for some of you guys. You have to lose. You have to win. That's just how it goes. But with Rattler, it's not really a surprise to me, but this was a close competition.
Yeah. I mean, it was a close competition. I'm hiding in the shadows, in the darkness tonight because apparently, according to some people, think that my world was ruined by Tyler Shough losing the quarterback competition. But no, I think that this was a very, very fun outcome for the Saints. I mean, Spencer Rattler, he deserved this shot. He got his shot, and he does look like the guy that if you are trying to win games, you start him to begin the year. And it looks like this team's trying to win games. And, fair play to Kellen Moore. Everyone wants, some people want to see a rebuild or, tank for March for Arch. But I don't think this coaching staff's going to do that. And I think Spencer Rattler being named the starting quarterback is a big sign of that. Ross, what do you think that Spencer Rattler being the quarterback means for this team?
Yeah, look, I think that it means that this is a new coaching staff that's ready to march to the beat of its own drum, that there's not somebody that's pulling strings and telling Kellen Moore what kind of decisions he needs to make or anything like that. Like, this is a coaching staff that's making its own decisions. And I know that that is a maybe unwarranted concern that was out there, but it's good to see. I mean, look, I thought Spencer Rattler was well ahead throughout the majority of this quarterback competition, including at the end. I just wasn't sure if the Saints were actually going to roll with him or if they wanted to go immediately to their guy in Tyler Shough. I think the three things that led to Spencer Rattler becoming the guy, just listening to Kellen Moore, experience, consistency, confidence. Those were kind of the three things that he kind of harped on around what Spencer Rattler brings. And so now as you walk into this 2025 season with the New Orleans Saints, you can rest assured that this is a New Orleans Saints team that is not interested in trying to maintain the ways of old or live by the definitions of what was successful or unsuccessful for a previous regime. Kellen Moore and this New Orleans Saints coaching staff are doing what it is that they think will allow them to go out there and win football games. And so you can rebuild without tanking. I think that that's what we're going to see here is a team that still wants to be competitive, and they went with the quarterback that they felt was going to make them most competitive. And I'm excited to see what Spencer Rattler does with the opportunity.
Yeah. Lance, what do you think of the Spencer Rattler winning the job decision?
Well, I think it means the thing that we've kind of been saying this whole entire offseason is that he's more ready. I don't think it necessarily means that Spencer Rattler's the one that's going to lead us to a Super Bowl, right? Like,
right.
I do think
Slow down.
even though he was a guy that didn't win any games last year and kind of struggled when he was in the lineup, he still has that experience that I think was the differentiator in this whole quarterback battle. And obviously he was the one that kind of took the bull by the horns throughout the entirety of the offseason into training camp, and just looks like the guy that's more ready to play next week. That doesn't mean that he's going to continue to look like that guy through the entirety of this season. I also think on the flip side of that, I don't think it's a terrible reflection per se on Tyler Shough that he didn't win the day one starter job. I just think that's them saying, hey, we need a little bit of time for you to develop, and we need to get a better look at the guy that was here last year before we start making any crazy decisions. It's not like Spencer Rattler was some undrafted free agent. He was literally drafted in 2024, right? He was a draft pick by this organization as well. So he was not a second round pick. So sure, there's that on Shuck's side, but the fact that Kellen is willing to give the keys to Spencer Rattler, I think that means that a guy who was a former player himself trusts that he's more ready to go. He's got command of the offense, and the guys around him are energized by him being their leader. I think that's another thing that kind of goes a long way. Not to say that Tyler Shough can't get the energy from the guys, but a lot of the things that you've heard, or that I've heard at least, is that the guys just really gravitate towards Spencer Rattler. So it makes sense to me that he's allowed to be the first guy out. And it's a good thing that Kellen Moore is saying that his leash is not going to be super short, because I mean, it's hard to be a good team if you're rolling the dice on who's going to be the starting quarterback from week to week, right? You got to give him an opportunity to play and to grow while playing. And I don't know how long that leash is, but I know that it can't be just a couple of weeks to start this season. So, you know, obviously the jury is still out, but I'm like most people who was excited to see Spencer Rattler with a full offense out there, all the starters, everybody healthy. Like, now we'll be able to truly see what he can do in this offense with this full supporting cast around him. And then we can make a better judgment of, okay, is he the guy or not?
Correct. Yeah, great call.
I really do think that this says a lot about Kellen Moore as much as it does about Spencer Rattler, because there are a few teams where I feel like you go in, you have a rookie quarterback that was, your second round pick, you drafted, the number 40 pick at that, and then there's a fifth round second year guy from around the league. There's not a lot of coaches that I feel like would give that fifth round guy a chance. I mean, obviously it's not every player is the same, but you kind of see it in the sentiment around the league where some people are shocked that Spencer Rattler's the pick. Kellen Moore's not afraid to do what needs to be done to what he believes will be the best winning product on the field every week. And I think that's a great thing for Saints fans because, I think people need to take risks. And I feel like this is kind of a risk because it is, you're not throwing your draft pick to the wind, but it just says a lot to me, I think, about Kellen Moore naming Spencer Rattler that guy.
I think rolling with either one of these guys qualifies as a risk, right? As opposed to going and getting like the veteran quarterback that might be able to win you a few games or something, or help you win a few games or something like that. I think you're right, Dylan. Like either one of these is a risk, and it's clear that Kellen Moore is willing to take those.
Yeah, and the thing is, back to Lance, what he said, taking the bull by the horns. When the whole Derek Carr stuff happened, Rattler was there. I mean, he was all ready to go and stuff. And so again, not that that extra time really, like saying that that's the defining moment for him, but coming in here and just being able to like Lance said, grab the bull by the horns. That was what I feel like was what he needed to do and what happened to help him grow, develop, and such. And we always harped on there's no veteran quarterback, but he's got all the quarterback help. He had Scott Tolzien, you had Nussmeier in there, Kellen Moore. I mean, he has a good support system around him. And so again, we're talking about a team that maybe can win 4 or 5 games, right? Like if we get higher than that, maybe, because I made my prediction and I'm off my rocker a little bit, but I still feel like there's some winnable games out there. But it's going to depend on what the defense looks like. You got to take pressure off of whoever was going to start. The defense has to come to play and make those opportunities for the offense. And the offense has to lean on the ground game, and they have to get that offensive line going. This is not all on Spencer Rattler. So just throw that out there.
Yeah, good call. Yeah, like if the Saints struggles with the first 4 games, I don't think we're going to be on this podcast talking about how the Saints need to bench Spencer Rattler. Like, I just don't see that being the case. Like, considering the rest of the roster, considering the opponents and the level of opponents, new offense, new defense, all these other things, unless Spencer Rattler is for some reason just absolutely struggling over the course of those first 4 games, like there's so much more to look at beyond that. And so I think you're going to see a lot longer of a leash than maybe some people will expect.
Don't say beyond the results.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I mean that it is a tough little stretch to begin the season, and I don't think that this is as much as I don't think that it is Tyler Shough, them not wanting to throw Tyler Shough to the Wolves. I don't think it is them throwing Spencer Rattler to the Wolves, because I've seen a lot of people like, oh, you have the toughest part of the schedule, the first like 5 games or whatever it is, just throw out Spencer Rattler, let him get beat up, and then you give Tyler Shough the reins of the West Way. I don't think that is what this is. I do think that Spencer Rattler is the guy right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly sounds that way.
Yeah. And I think the best case, if they could split both of those games, then everybody should feel really good about that. And I'm just saying, I don't care what they do; they just split them.
Yeah, I don't think there's. I'm not going to say ever, but it would be extremely rare for there be a coach who's throwing a quarterback out there on purpose for them to fail. Like that, right? That doesn't make any sense, because generally the coach is tied to the quarterback,
right?
And if the quarterback struggles long enough, that coach isn't going to have a job for very long. So I don't see that as being the case. That's very, very conspiracy theorist. But I just think that Spencer has the talent. He seems to have the intangibles as well, the leadership qualities, the stuff that you can't really quantify, but it works well for quarterbacks. Healthy offensive line, healthy AK and run game. I mean, like all those things are going to be important. And then playing complementary football, right? Like I don't think as much as Kellen Moore wants to throw the ball, we saw him morph into a run-first offensive coordinator last year in Philly. So maybe it's more of the same this year. Let's lean on that run game as much as possible and not necessarily take the ball out of Spencer Rattler's hands, but don't force him to do too much too soon. And then as he grows throughout the entirety of the season, maybe you start to open that playbook up and the play calling gets a little bit more aggressive. And once you're dominant as a run team, teams have to account for that a lot more. So that does also open up the passing game. So I think that he's making the correct call today, but the jury's still out for the long term to see if this works out or not.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, we've talked a lot about what this means for Spencer Rattler, but there's another quarterback that people are still going to be waiting to see when we come back. Let's talk about what this decision means for Tyler Shough. Does this mean he's never going to play a snap in the NFL? I don't know. We'll talk about it. The NFL season is almost here. I can taste it, or maybe that's the salt in the air in the Outer Banks. But FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Let's take a look at some Saints props that are going to be there on this weekend that I think could win you that $300. I love Rashid Shaheed at over 34.5 receiving yards. He had a strong camp and has flashed that ability throughout the preseason. I don't think that 34.5 is a crazy number. You know, he averaged 17.5 yards per reception last year, and this is a very unproven Cardinals secondary. Another option is Juwan Johnson at over 2.5 receptions. I don't know if y'all saw. We'll talk about the 53-man roster. The Saints tight end room is barren, and I don't think there's anyone else really, vying for those targets in week one. So I'm really heavy on Juwan Johnson. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, $300. We have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't like, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes the survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thank you for helping us out. All right, guys, let's jump back into it with what does this mean for Tyler Shough? Lance, let's start with you. Does this mean Tyler Shough is terrible and is never going to play in the NFL?
Absolutely not. And honestly, like the situations where teams don't have an established quarterback, the Patrick Mahomes, the Lamar Jackson, the Josh Allens, the Herberts, like it's always fluid. Rosters are always fluid. The starting quarterback position on struggling teams is always a fluid situation. And honestly, he's only one play away. Spencer Rattler could get a concussion in a game. And here we go. It's Tyler Shough time. So it's not the end of the world. I think it's a good thing for his long-term development to not have to go out there on week one and play against the Arizona defense, even though I don't know that Arizona's defense is going to be one of the better ones in the National Football League. It's still an NFL defense on week one where you don't really know all that you're going to get from them. I think that could be really, really bad as far as his confidence goes if he goes out there and gets annihilated. But I do think that he's got the stuff to be able to kind of stay in it mentally and continue to prepare as if he is the starter and watch what Spencer Rattler does and take the advice of the coaching staff as to how it is that he's supposed to be preparing himself. He's going to get the reps for the practice squad as the number 2 quarterbacks usually do. So it's not like he's not going to be playing any football, just not in the game. So he will continue to develop. He'll continue to sharpen his tools as he's out there at practices. And it's not the end of the world for him. He is the backup quarterback for one of the 32 NFL franchises. So it's still a pretty big deal. And at some point, we will see him. I can't tell you when that's going to be, but it could be injury. It could be lack of wins. It could be Spencer Rattler just looks horrible, which I definitely hope does not happen. But we will see him at some point. I just really can't tell you when.
Ross, I wanted to ask you about a specific. Oh, do you have something to say about that?
No, not necessarily about that, but go ahead.
I wanted to ask you a specific question about a specific answer Kellen Moore gave in a press conference. He mentioned wanting to a fan of developing quarterbacks and developing them right, and that does mean letting him sit. But does that mean that if the Saints do have the opportunity to draft another quarterback, does that mean he might not if he sees enough from Tyler Shough this year? Like, say the Saints are in the top 5 next year. What does that mean? What do you think that means?
Yeah, if you're in the top 5 next year, you're probably at least willing to look at a quarterback. And if the right one that you want falls to you there, I don't think you're going to hesitate in doing that. It's the most important position in football. A lot of people would say that it's the most important position in professional sports, period. I actually kind of lean that way. And I think you're going to swing at that position until you get the guy that you have no questions about. There were no questions about Drew Brees. There are no questions about Lamar Jackson. There are no questions about Patrick Mahomes, the guys that Lance was naming earlier, Josh Allen, so on and so forth. You want to find that guy that leaves no doubt, or at least as little doubt as is possible. I guess there's no such thing as 0% doubt, but you can't ride into 2026 and say, we're still figuring it out. Like, you can if you have a new person in the building and everything. But yeah, I think you absolutely are looking for, if you're drafting top 5, you're looking to see if there's an opportunity for you to grab another quarterback option. And I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case, that we're talking about some third quarterback at that time that could potentially be the starter in 2026.
John, what do you think that this decision means for Tyler Shough?
It just means go develop some more. Go learn. It's time to be a sponge, and let's just see what happens. Have an earpiece in on the sideline, listen, be attentive. You are the backup quarterback for the Saints, right? And so something could happen, like Lance said. We've seen it time and time again, especially with the Saints. One injury just happens to just derail this team, but you got to stay ready, and you got to have that mentality. And I remember Rattler being a guy that had that mentality too, is you can go in at any moment, and Tyler Shough's got to be the same way. It's just, look, it is what it is. He's not going to be affected by his preparation or anything like that. He said that as much in his interviews and such. You just got to continue to do what you can, develop where you need to, and just be ready, stay ready. And Rattler got his opportunity last year because of what he was able to do on the show team, to Lance's point, talking about getting reps and such. And so I think that'll be really good for Tyler Shough to be able to see what some of these defenses are doing and such, to be able to learn a lot more. So yeah, and the whole thing about him being 26, you got quarterbacks playing till 40. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not worried about that. He could play 8 to 10 years. Nobody cares. Like, I just think that's just such a weird way to look at it, is that he does have a chance to sit here and take a year if he doesn't get a chance to play at all, which I don't see that. I think he's going to play at some point. He probably might even start at some point, just because that's just how the NFL is. You just don't know. It's totally unpredictable. But as of right now, I do like the fact that they stuck to the decision and made a decision, and it's saying, this is what we're doing. We're charging full steam ahead. But for Tyler Shough, man, this is not the end of it. I think he had a good bit of advantage coming into this because he was handpicked by Kellen Moore. He was Kellen's guy. But again, you have to go in and perform and do the things. He started kind of slow in training camp, after kind of having some good moments in minicamp and OTAs. And so I think that start there is just, he's got to get reps. He's got to get some more experience, and he'll be fine. I feel like it. And, if the Saints don't hit on either of them, then they can take a quarterback, or they can go to free agency and sign a quarterback. I mean, I know that's not a crazy thought, but this is a rebuild plan. They're acting like a rebuild plan here, and we're just going to have to see be along for the ride for this. And nobody's expecting Super Bowl. Nobody's really expecting playoffs. I mean, if they can get to 7 or 8 wins this season, I'd call that a huge win, but it's more looking like 4 or 5.
Yeah. 7 or 8 would be huge for them. The thing I was going to mention earlier, when it comes to like second round picks and things like that, like I've seen people talk about how like, if they don't start Tyler Shough, then they wasted the number 40 overall pick. Since 1950, there are about, I think it's either 68 or 48. That's a huge difference, but it's one of those two. Quarterbacks have been drafted in the second round. And since 1957 of those quarterbacks started the first game of their rookie season. And the last one that did it was Deshaun Kaiser of the Cleveland Browns.
Golly.
Derek Carr was one of those 7 as well. And so I wanted to mention that because a part of the narrative around Spencer Rattler winning that I've seen is this idea that, oh, well, then they just wasted a second round pick. They wasted a top 50 pick. They wasted the number 40 overall pick. And everything about the history of the NFL tells you that the out of the ordinary thing would have been him starting his first week in his rookie season, not the opposite. So just something to consider that I wanted to add context wise there.
Yeah, there's another wasted second round pick that everybody should harp on. Not Tyler Shough.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, Dylan. I had to get that in.
Yeah, that one won't be coming up in our favorite moves segment or biggest surprises segment.
Or it might be.
Or I meant to say biggest surprises. It might be the favorite. It is the favorite move for some people, but it's definitely not the biggest surprise. The only thing I want to say about his age is that I don't think that it really means much for the Saints. I think the biggest thing his age means is for him, because it does mean that he does have a little bit of a smaller leash in terms of his development for some teams, because I feel like there is a difference between a quarterback entering his fourth year, still trying to, figure it out kind of, but he's 26 versus 30. I feel like there is a little bit of a difference there, but I don't think that it's going to end up mattering, because if he does, if he takes until year 4 to work out, the Saints aren't going to be worried about him anyway. And then it just won't matter at that point for the Saints. If he works out, he'll work out and he'll play 12 years or whatever, and then retire. I think that's a perfectly fine career length for a quarterback.
Yeah,
I think this is playing out kind of perfectly, if I'm being honest. Like, being able to be the new staff to come in to evaluate last year's guy early this season and just say that stuff doesn't go well. Now you get an opportunity to evaluate this year's guy to see what you have moving forward for the future. And yes, if we're in the top 5 next year, you better believe 100% if we're a team that only wins 2 or 3 or 4 games, that we are going to be looking at a quarterback, because we clearly don't have that guy on our roster today. So yeah, I mean, I think that it sucks to say that this is working out perfectly when we only expect to win 4 games, but like, they've got to do their jobs as far as evaluators go and see what the potential is for these guys. And it's tough. Like, it is tough, like, because this is not a Super Bowl ready roster, but you've got to be able to work with the guys that you have. You can't overturn an entire roster in a year, and you can't make enough moves during the regular season to go from a team that's supposed to finish at the bottom of the division into a playoff team. So they've got to work with the guys that they have in the building. But I do think this is a great opportunity to get full evaluations on both quarterbacks. So now you know what you need moving forward after this season ends.
Yep.
Yeah. And again, I think there's 8 winnable games on this season. You got Chicago, the Jets, the Titans. You could split with everybody in the division. Then you find another win in there. I don't think it's too far-fetched that they could get into 7 or 8 win territory if asterisk, footnote, all those other things, if the defense can play much better, which we expect them to be better. I don't know how much better that they can be, but the new scheme shift should help. That should take some pressure off of Spencer Rattler. And the biggest thing that, we've talked about and harped on this team is consistency, is be the same team every week, is don't be good on offense and then suck on defense, and then be great on defense and then suck on offense. Like, they're just so Jekyll and Hyde from week to week, game to game, that it's just been maddening. And so I hope with the coaching, the new coaching, with Kellen Moore being the guy that kind of instills all of his plan, that we see a more consistent team, a more competitive team, because that's really all I want to see is competitive. Don't get blown out one week and then go blow out the other team. Be in it, 1-score games or something. That's really what I want to see for this team this season.
Well, John, this is the NFL. There are 17 winnable games.
Well,
doesn't mean they're
not going to beat Buffalo. They're not going to beat Buffalo.
Hey,
they're not going to beat Miami.
They're
not going to beat Tampa. Probably Tampa's going to sweep them because Tampa's out. I mean, listen.
I'm not going to say they're going to win them. I'm saying there are 17 winnable games, and when you have Spencer Rattler at quarterback, anything's possible, because now it's all about the Rattler train, the rattlesnake. I really do. Closing thoughts on this quarterback battle. I think that this is probably how it should have worked out, how it should have played out, and I think this is the best chance that you're going to get to give both of these guys a fighting chance at the quarterback battle throughout this year.
One of my favorite things that we saw after the decision was made and Kellen Moore announced it was Tyler Shuck's agent coming out and saying, I like the plan. And when you have people around you, if you're Tyler Shough, that are saying, hey, this is good, this can work, here's how we maximize this, all this, and you treat it that way, like the mentality of how it's received, processed, and utilized and taken advantage of is almost as important as the decision itself. And so to see the positivity, and I saw it like Tyler in the locker room and stuff like that throughout this week, and just the positivity around him that he has kind of accepted all of this with and seen all this with, like he sees this as an opportunity, not that he lost the battle, but he still sees the opportunity for growth, the opportunity of development. If he wasn't feeling that way, it could be the worst thing in the world for him. But the fact that he's walked away with the maturity of it all, I think that that is something else that is kind of that one of those kind of unseen ingredients, if you will, that would turn this into a positive thing. Like you have to have the right mentality around this. And he certainly seems like he does. And he's got people around him that do too.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we've had enough of the quarterback talk, quarterback competition. I'm just glad the quarterback competition's done, so we can stop talking about that. And now we've talked about the decision. So let's move on to some different stuff. Let's talk about the 53-man roster coming up next. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up, and college football is already starting. Oh, I was watching college football before we went live, and it was the greatest feeling in the world. For this weekend, PrizePicks is offering a major max discount for Dak Prescott on over 0.5 passing yards. That means just one passing yard will give you a completed leg. Tonight was the big...
Oh, even Dak Prescott could do that.
Tyler Shough might not. Tonight was the first big Thursday night of the college football season, so I hopped on PrizePicks and I created my own power play. As we speak, I keep checking my phone to see if Nebraska's Zia Hunter can pick up 40 yards. So download the PrizePicks app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, jumping back into it, let's talk 53-man roster because that was the other big piece of news. There's a lot of moves, a lot of shocking moves, but what was the biggest surprise? And let's start with Ross. What do you think was the biggest surprise with this?
Yeah, I think for me, I have a couple that I could go with here. I think for me, the biggest surprise was seeing how the Saints kind of managed their edge rusher room, but not from the perspective of who they kept. It was like, okay, yeah, moving on from one of those players made sense. I'm sure we'll circle around to that. But there was only one draft pick from this year's class that didn't end up on the initial 53. And it was Fadil Diggs, who I thought had this strong training camp, had a strong preseason as well. Now, what we know is this fear of like, oh, you cut a player, you cut a rookie, and they're definitely going to get picked up on waivers. That's so far overblown, and that happens like 2 or 3% of the time or something like that. It doesn't happen as often as people think that it does. And so he went through waivers. He's back on the practice squad. But I was a little bit surprised. I wasn't surprised by Jasheem Davis just because he had the injury. It was kind of one of those players where you could absolutely see him making it through waivers and things like that. Not only did he make it through waivers, but he had like some of these other pieces. Like he hasn't really been, at least to this point, I don't think he's been picked up anywhere. So that was a little bit surprising. But it was just kind of the management of that edge rusher room that I thought was a little bit of a surprise for me in terms of seeing like how they managed Fadil Diggs in particular and what that could potentially mean for him. There wasn't a ton super surprising for me. Like everything kind of seemed logical, which just is the Kellen Moore side. But I thought that was one that kind of stood out to me quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see this group because I really thought that either Fadil Diggs or Jasheem Davis. I think that both of those guys could very well end up on the roster before the end of the year, or at least getting some playing time because they both have flashed in moments. So I think that, I'm interested to see what the pass rush room looks like. And shout out to Chris Rumpf for making it.
Yep.
No
shock there.
Feel good story.
No shock there either.
Yeah, that's a fun one. I guess we could talk about it. Isaiah Foskey did get cut. That's not very surprising, but it was time to move on. Hopefully he can get a shot somewhere at some point and work his way back. But it just didn't seem like it was going to work out in New Orleans.
I was gonna say I talked to him after the last preseason game just to kind of put it all. And look, it's interesting because he's like, he said he felt good in practice. He felt that it was the games. It just didn't translate. He couldn't make the plays. He wasn't making the plays. And I asked him, I was like, do you think it was just like a matter of were you in your head or something? And he just legit paused for a few seconds and then answered it. And it's kind of like, I think I was in my head a little bit and such. And so I think that was just kind of the thing. And that's tough. But, he hasn't been picked up as of this moment on Thursday night that we're talking on a practice squad, which is kind of crazy to me too. But you can't cut the mustard. Sometimes it's hard, but with Foskey, I mean, he's a good dude, but just never panned out, and it's unfortunate that, we'll harp on that for a while. And the draft history for the Saints team has kind of been up and down, probably more down than it has been up. And they can't ride the coattails of that 2017 draft anymore. That's long out the window.
Yeah. And the 2023 draft is hanging by its threads at the moment.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Brian Brzee, Kendre Miller, and Jordan Howden are the only ones left on the roster. And they need one of those two guys that's not Brian Brzee to do something.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure by the end of next year's offseason, we're going to talk a lot about the 2023 draft class because by the end of this year, it could look to be a very, very, very poor showing. But I think if Kendre Miller can turn it around this year, it's at least
he's the hope.
Two contribute. He's the hope because I think Brian Brzee is fine. But okay, let's talk about some more surprises. I think that I'll talk about what I think was the biggest surprise is the approach to the tight end room. Trayden Welch being cut was by far the biggest surprise, I think, for me. I thought he was a lock to make it just because I think that they needed playmakers there. And he looked to have the promise of being a playmaker. He's another guy I talked about, like Justine Davis, Fido Diggs. They'll make their way to the roster at some point throughout the season. I'd be shocked if Trayden Welch doesn't play at all. And I think that they're still going to toy around with the tight end room because right now it's just Jawan Johnson and Malik Motaval. And I think that, if those are two of like four guys, that's fine. But having those be the two healthy tight ends right now, I just feel like you have to do a little bit more. So we might see like a Jack Stoll or a Trayden Welch come back up from the practice squad. But just the overall approach to tight end throughout the past couple of days has been really shocking to me.
Yeah, it's been interesting.
They won't go into the first game with two tight ends, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's I don't think that's ever happened before in the modern NFL. Like it's just it would be a silly mistake for them to make. So as we know, these rosters are ever evolving and changing. And you're right, there will be some of those guys, probably multiple of those guys. I would imagine they'd go into most of the games with at least 4 tight ends active, and maybe some weeks it'll be 3 based on what you're dressing for the receivers and the running backs. But 2 is like kind of unheard of unless you just have a bazillion injuries, which we do have a couple, but there are other guys that are capable of stepping in there and taking some of those reps.
Yeah. The cool story around Welsh is that he had other offers to go to other practice squads, but he wanted to come back to New Orleans and be a part of it. One of the things that he highlighted was that he loves, or one of the things that was kind of echoed all around a few of the players that chose to come back. I don't think Welsh said this specifically, but a few of the different players that came back to the practice squad talked about how they loved being in New Orleans because not only they treated well as a player, but they're treated well as human beings, and that moved the needle for them big time in terms of not just being a number, not just being a player. And so I thought that was pretty cool to hear. There was a lot of players that talked about it, but Welsh was one of those guys that had other options and still made the decision to come back to the practice squad here in New Orleans.
We talked a lot about this offseason, about our early impressions of Kellen Moore as a coach. And I feel like you're seeing that pay off with a decision like that. It really does seem like Moore has made a very positive impression on all of his players. And I think that is one of the early stages to building a championship team. There has to be synergy and trust and respect between a coach and his players. And I feel like we've seen time and time again, Moore has done that early on.
Yeah.
Let's go with Lance. Lance, what are your biggest surprises of the 53-man roster cut down?
I mean, I think the easy one was Nephi Sewell, but I won't go there.
Oh,
I know
sure.
that's Ross's guy. Honestly, for me, the biggest surprise was the claiming Trey Palmer. I just would not have expected to pick up, especially after trading for Devon Vele last week, grabbing another receiver, which when you claim him from waivers, you have to sign him to your active roster. So that one was kind of like, oh, okay, that's another small-ish fast receiver to add to the group of mostly smaller fast receivers. It definitely kind of confused me a little bit, but I guess I understand because he was a good player for the Bucs. They just ended up drafting a couple guys that are really good young players as well. Chris Godwin's coming off of PUP. So like they have a lot of guys in Tampa and he became expendable, but he's a guy that's made some plays against us. So the organization has familiarity with the player, obviously Louisiana kid, bringing him back home. I mean, like it's a cool story, but it kind of surprised me. I knew that he was going to get claimed. I didn't think there was any doubt about him having an opportunity somewhere else, but it definitely surprised me for him to come here. But again, you can never have too many weapons, and it's the NFL. So guys will get banged up and next man up, depending. I mean, it doesn't even matter what position, it's every position. So if somebody goes down, the next guy's got to be ready to go. And Trey Palmer's a guy that's had some success in the league, and I trust that they'll get him up to speed here pretty soon. And we might be seeing him play pretty soon as well.
Yeah. I thought, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I have a story to tell about Trey Palmer, but go ahead.
Oh, this is still about Trey Palmer because I was saying that was going to be my favorite pick because I really love this. I love this addition to the wide receiver room because I feel like it really ties it together. You have a bunch of different pieces that kind of do both similar and different things. He had a 13.5 average depth of target as a rookie, and I feel like that is along with like the Mason Tiptons, I think that he is someone that can stretch the field and make plays. And I think with the addition of Devon Vele, then you had the opportunity to go in and get another fast guy. And that's not to say Devon Vele had a 4.47. I want to say he's not a slow guy, so that he can run. This is a fun, fast wide receiver room, and I think that we've seen a lot of Kellen Moore, getting the ball to playmakers in space, and I feel like this is a receiver room that's going to be able to do that, at least take advantage of that. Because if there's no one in front of them, no one's catching any of these guys. It feels like.
Right. Yeah, Vele is I'm using very heavy air quotes when I use this word, slowest wide receiver, very heavy air quotes, slowest wide receiver on the active roster, and still ran a 4.47. You know what I mean? Like, gosh, dude, like it's
he's
crazy.
Not the fastest.
Right.
Yeah.
I talked to Trey Palmer in the locker room on Thursday, and I asked him a couple questions. He's very like concise with his answers and everything like that. Great personality, super kind person, just has like very short answers. And so at one point I asked him, they always talk, Keith Williams, the New Orleans Saints wide receivers coach, always talks about like, this is a game of separation. It's not always a game of big body or anything like that. You can be big, but if you move, he said something to me like, if you're big, but you move like a Mack truck, it's not going to do me much good. But he likes these guys in great separation. And so I asked Trey Palmer what his, how he would kind of rate himself or how he would evaluate himself as a separator. And he leaned into the microphone and went, "You'll see." That's all he said. And I love it. I love that attitude. Like I love that confidence and everything like that. So I think that the other thing that he adds to the room outside of his skill set is that he kind of adds this a really kind of confident attitude. Yeah, I'm going to make it happen kind of guy. I think that's a great fit for this locker room too.
I want to add, he was a freshman on the 2019 LSU team. And I think he has carried over something that team started. Be sure to check his Twitter every game day. He'll tweet. He's one of those guys that tweets up, "I woke up pissed off today." He does that every week, and that's something that bunch of those players did. So it's a fun tradition. Trey Palmer waking up really, really mad. I imagine he was a little pissed off when he got waived, but coming back home probably helped that a little bit. John, let's go ahead with your pick.
Yeah, so I think Sewell was a good pick. Rico Payton was another one I'd probably throw out. But I'm going to go with and just a quick story. So Rico got hurt. He had a hamstring injury. He was going to be out 2 to 3 weeks. They were going to do an injury settlement with him, but then he got claimed by New York. So it was one of those things where Rajon Wright, he earned that spot, but if Rico didn't get hurt, I think he probably would have been in. But that's just one thing. But I think the offensive line has to be the biggest thing for me. Again, they had a waiver claim, Xavier Truss, and then they trade for Sim Richards. And then before that, they traded Colin Saunders for Luke Fortner. So I know they had to look at offensive line because of all the injuries that they had. But I just the fact of how active they have been waiver wise and trade wise, it's I don't know what I would describe it. Like, I think these are moves that are obviously necessary, but I just feel like these types of moves, I don't know if it's saying, okay, we really are we're not in tank mode. We're trying to compete mode. You know what I mean? Like, if they didn't really care, they could have just got some guys off the street, but they went after specific players and picked up specific players to help their offensive line. And look, I like the direction of this offensive line. I think Fortner, Truss, and Richards are great depth additions. They may play at some point this season, sooner rather than later. But look at this offensive line, and it's so much is predicated on their success. Like, the Saints cannot do anything if their offensive line isn't there. And guys, I'm going to just say it: the guard spots look really shoddy right now. Trevor Penning's hurt; he's out of his boot, but he's still hurt. He's no guarantee he's going to be ready for week 1. Cesar hasn't played that well. And so I'm just curious to see if any of these guys can push these other two that are there at guard. And again, I'm going to be off my rocker. I probably need my medicine, but at what point do they say, okay, we just seen enough, and maybe they make a change with some of these guys that they just brought in? Maybe not, but I don't know. This offensive line has got to be a big storyline for me, and the way they approached it after all the roster cuts and everything.
The last thing I'll say before we move on to our next segment is I was a little bit surprised, both when Jake Kaner was waived and whenever he came back to the practice squad. I was surprised. Those moves were surprising.
I was surprised
with both of them because I felt like whenever he was waived, it was like, okay, I think that it's time to go find a different opportunity. Maybe he did, and then everyone said, "We good," and then. Now he's back with the practice squad. Who knows how that played out? But he's back, and it would be, I was just a little bit surprised because I felt like they would go with a different QB3 option. But right now it does seem that if
Easton
there
Stick
was a
made
need
sense.
for a QB, Easton Stick made sense, but he went somewhere else. I can't remember off the top of my head.
He went back to the Falcons on the practice.
The Falcons. Okay, yeah, he went back to the Falcons.
And then so they brought Hunter Deckers back.
Yeah. So it's Hunter Deckers and Jake Hader are the other quarterbacks. So I expected a different move whenever they waived Jake Hader, but let's talk about that a little bit more in our favorite moves. No, but coming up next, we're gonna go from surprises to our favorite moves. John and Lance both stole mine, so we're just gonna skip me next time.
Favorite moves? I still got another answer.
Run it back.
Yeah. Just kidding.
First try. Let's go with our favorite
Batman
moves.
reference.
Ross, let's go with you. Your favorite move they made.
My favorite move that they've made. I liked. Okay, they only kept one undrafted free agent, which to me was they only kept one undrafted free agent that they signed as a priority free agent, right? Kai Kroger was added later. He makes the roster, but I liked continuing to ride the hot hand effectively. That is that belongs to Torres Simpkins. He was just awesome throughout the preseason and a great story and all those other things. So I love him making the roster, and him being that one and only undrafted free agent that made the roster meant something to me because it showed a little bit of a different thought process for this New Orleans Saints team. Typically, you're looking at 2 or 3 undrafted free agents that make the roster sometimes. A lot of times over in the defensive line, everything. There used to be some really good skill position players that would make these rosters every now and then. There was a wide receiver named Lance Moore. There was a running back named Pierre Thomas. Like, there were those guys. But over the last few years, it's always kind of been a lot of the like trench players and then like Mason Tipton, right? But I loved keeping Torres Simpkins going. It was an easy decision, I'm sure. It was an obvious decision, I'm sure. But to me, like, if you're gonna change the way that you're doing things and therefore make it a little bit more challenging, maybe for these UDFAs to make the roster, that was the guy to roll the dice on. That was the guy to give the opportunity. So I thought that it showed both a bit of a change of process, maybe, but also an awareness of where the talent is. And I thought that they made the right decision there.
Lance, let's go with your favorite move of the roster, favorite roster move of the 53-man cut down.
Well, I mean, for me, it's always guys that kind of have it tougher, guys that are not going to be handed anything, guys that have to go out and really take a roster spot. Like, sure, they all have to earn their spot on the team, but there's certain guys that kind of know that they're going to be on the team. And then there's other guys that are basically kind of bottom end of the training.
I think I know where you're going with this.
That have to go get it. And I actually have 2 guys, and hopefully nobody else is going to say them.
I got 2.
Isaiah Stallbird
and
Rajon Wright. Guys that showed up in these preseason games in a manner to which the organization could not ignore them. It's one thing to go out there against the threes and make a couple of plays like, oh, wow, like that was a great job. But like, these guys did it on a weekly basis, especially Isaiah Stallbird. He did it both on defense and on special teams. But the way that Rajon Wright played in that last preseason game, I mean, like that he looked like a starting cornerback in the NFL. And they showed his highlights, and he was active, and he was making plays, and he wasn't scared to get his nose dirty on tackles. I mean, like, speaking, from personal experience of a guy who back in 2006 had a 90+ yard punt return against Kansas City in the last preseason game, which I'm sure allowed me to take a roster spot. Like, I feel great for those guys to be able to show up in these preseason games and get a roster spot that they 100% earned with their play throughout the preseason.
Yeah. Ross, do you remember last year when we did our...
I was about to bring that up.
Yeah, I was like, I told you Stallbird was my dude. That hybrid, that Sua Cravens type guy. Like, I'm so happy. This is one of the best dudes in the locker room. And so I'm super happy for him. I really think that what he did last year, and then of course you got to remember he was in the safety room towards the end of the year too, and so because he had that experience, and I was wondering what position they were going to play, but they came in and said, nope, you're going to linebacker, and he was a handpicked guy from Darren Rizzi, you know what I'm saying, and Phil Galliano knew plenty, so great story, awesome job to get where he needs to, but like I'm with Lance, when a UDFA can make a team and take a job from somebody that had been doing it, that's more power to you, man. I love that.
Yeah. My understanding too is that he was told that he was moving back to linebacker in like March. And so he had to quickly like figure out all those different things to kind of like get out of safety shape, get in the linebacker shape. And man, he just had such a strong camp and everything, and a strong preseason. Like, it was cool to watch. John, I was going to bring up too our conversation that we had when we spoke with Rajon last year when he had that preseason injury, and he was just like, I'm just going to keep my head down. I'm going to keep grinding. I'm going to come back and all this stuff. And so for him to come back from that season-ending injury before his season even got going last year, and he was performing well last year too in the preseason when he was out there, to come back from that and then earn a roster spot. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah. Great story.
Yeah. John, who's your favorite pick?
I'm going to go with Christian Boyd. I think that you look at a guy who got the wrong end of the stick last year, and we've talked about it plenty on this podcast, that he didn't get any type of development while he was there. I mean, it just was a frequent inactive. They gave more attention to the other guys, and it was just bad coaching. But a guy who, in a crowded room, mind you, there are a lot of those defensive tackles, but this is a man who just came in, and again, he was a draft pick last year, but he really came into his own this training camp in the preseason, put it all together, got his confidence building, and with under new defensive line coach and such. I mean, so I just feel like for him to be able to come in here and look, some of that, they traded Colin Saunders, and then he also had John Ridgeway III go on IR designated return. But you talk to other players, they have nothing but glowing comments to say about Christian Boyd and the potential he has. I hope to see it on game day. I know that Devon Godshaw and Ryan Brzee, Nathan Shepard, those are probably your primary guys that are going to play DT, maybe sprinkle in some Jonathan Bullard or call up Jonah Williams. But look, I expect Christian Boyd to be a good presence this season. But I feel like that's him and Stallbird were my two guys that I'm just like, man, I feel really good about them, knowing what they both have come from to be able to get to that point. I think that's something pretty special.
Love that.
Yeah. I think I'll go with what I was going to pick earlier. We didn't talk too much about it. I'll talk about my favorite moves was all of how they handled the offensive line depth, because the offensive line depth was so poor, had such poor showings throughout all of the preseason. It really felt like they couldn't afford to be non-active there. And that is, they were, far from inactive. They had the Xavier Trust. They traded for Asim Richards. They traded for Luke Fortner. And now this is a much different group. It felt like in years past, they might just be like, hey, we have these guys in the building. They can, fit into pads that we have. So let's throw them on the depth chart. And that's not
Caleb
what they did
Benenoch,
here.
2021, baby.
Yeah.
Literally fit that dude for pads like the day of that Monday night game and said, good luck, brother. We'll see you.
It really felt like that's how, the approach would be sometimes in the past. And I feel like, again, a lot of these moves that we've seen in the past couple of days are, feeling good about the decision-making of Kellen Moore and his New Orleans Saints squad. Because, it is still Mickey Loomis at GM, but, it's hard to imagine Kellen Moore not having a ton of say in all of these decisions.
How much younger they got, too.
Ross had a brain blast there or something.
Another name popped in my head that I wanted to bring up, but go ahead first, John.
No, I just said how young this team has got. I like that too. I mean, I think that's a really good thing, especially when you're trying to rebuild and stuff. So they got some good talent. But I'm sorry, you had your epiphany. Let me not subtract from that.
Another name that came to mind was Velus Jones Jr. I loved keeping him on the roster, man, because he gives you another returner, which I think can be super helpful. But just that level of dynamic running back play, speedy running back play, we haven't seen in New Orleans since CJ Spiller, maybe Darren Sproles most appropriately, but maybe CJ Spiller being the next speedy guy and everything that I can think of. But yeah, I loved keeping Velus Jones Jr. and what he can add that the rest of that running back room doesn't necessarily have. Not that the rest of the running back room doesn't have anything to offer with Kendre and Devin Neal and Alvin Kamara, of course, but it's just the specificity of what and the versatility of what a Velus Jones Jr. can bring, I think is really intriguing.
I had him on my final roster at minicamp, so I'll pat
my
hand back for that one too.
Yeah, wow.
I'll pull up the article if y'all call me a liar too. So.
I believe it.
Not
That's
Joe.
awesome.
He ain't lying.
He ain't lying.
I like the running back group. I think Devin Neal coming in and having a strong last preseason game really sealed the deal or sealed the fate of guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Cam Akers, because you have, Kendre's the, easily RB2. Alvin Kamara is the RB1. You needed people to stand out past that. Devin Neal had that great game, and then Velus Jones Jr. has that speed and versatility. This is a pretty well-rounded and a good combination of veterans and youth in the running back room. I think it's a fun little group. In the past we felt a little bit like, oh my goodness, what are they going to do if Alvin Kamara ever leaves the field? Now it feels like they could, recreate him in the aggregate, as the one of our favorite Moneyball sayings.
Wow,
in terms of
good pull. We just had Coming to America and Moneyball in the last 3 minutes.
We're very diverse.
That's right.
Oh man. And there's only one Saints podcast where you can have that happen, and that is right here on the Saints Squad show. They were listening. You can check out me, Ross, John, and Lance, or socials for the latest. We'll be right back here on I guess Sunday. We'll keep our Sunday slot for this season, even though there is no game this week, to talk more Saints football and get ready for the first game of the week. But it's late. It's 11 p.m. over here, and I have to wake up at 4 a.m. for a fishing trip. So let's get this show out of here. But before we go,
you're the only one talking, dude.
It's another big. I know, but it's another big moment on Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. An all-star cast of Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can produce. Catch Locked On College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV.